Thank you. Shalom and good afternoon. I'm Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, and it's my honor to lead a bipartisan, bicameral delegation. We have members of the House and the Senate. We have both Democrats and Republicans. Before coming to Israel, we have spent time in Belgium meeting with NATO and EU leaders at COP26, where we were pleased to see a particularly large delegation from Israel and a delegation from the Palestinian Authority. We met with the Emir of Qatar and with Afghan refugees to convey our thanks to the Qatari people for their assistance in the Afghan evacuation. And we've been here, this is our second day, in a series of positive and constructive meetings. We met last night with Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. This morning we went to Ramallah, met with a group of Palestinian youth, and then with Palestinian Authority Prime Minister Shataya. And we've met with the Foreign Minister, Yair Lapid. Following this press conference, we go to meet with Defense Minister Benny Gantz, and then on to Germany for the last stop of this trip. We have a few simple common themes and messages. That the support for Israel remains bipartisan and strong in the United States Congress. I am an appropriator. There are several other appropriators here. The members of this delegation represent the widest possible range of important committees of the House and Senate, from intelligence and armed services to foreign relations to commerce to appropriations. But as a few simple broad themes, we are, as a bipartisan and bicameral delegation, in strong support of the two-state solution. We're strong supporters of the U.S.-Israel relationship and having that be a nonpartisan and sustained feature of U.S.-Israel relations. We look forward to Ambassador Tom Nides being posted here in Jerusalem. He was just confirmed by the United States Senate. And we are looking forward to continued dialogue. Every one of the meetings we had was positive and robust. A wide range of issues were raised and discussed. And I look forward to your questions. Let me close with two other comments, if I can. Our nations have been struggling with, working through the COVID-19 pandemic. We complimented Prime Minister Bennett and the people of Israel for having had a particularly effective and strong response. We also discussed the ways in which technology and innovation, both in the healthcare space and in technology and IT broadly, is one of the signature features of modern Israel, and is something where we look forward to enduring partnerships, particularly with regards to climate change and ways in which we can find solutions to the existential challenge facing all of us. So with that, I'm going to invite any of my colleagues who want to make a brief opening statement, then we'll all come up and take questions. Thank you very much. Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Senator Coons, and thank you for leading this excellent delegation. It's a real privilege to be back in Israel. It's an honor to be visiting a country that has seen so much of the world's history and has been such a steadfast ally and partner and friend to the U.S. And I appreciate everyone who took the time to meet with us during this trip. It was wonderful to have the opportunity to meet with both political leaders and students to discuss their visions for the future. The visit and those conversations inspire all of us to look at ways in which the U.S. and Israel can continue our important work together. As our closest ally in the Middle East, I recognize how critical it is for me to work in the Senate to ensure that Israel has the full cooperation and support of the United States when it comes to safeguarding its defense and security. As a member of both the Intelligence and Armed Services Committees, I'm well positioned to do this work, to build upon that critical relationship, and to continue to champion and secure funding for Israel's missile defense programs like the Iron Dome. We must work to support a two-state solution in which the Israelis and Palestinians can live side by side in peace and security. I look forward to working with our newly appointed Ambassador Tom Nides and with the local leaders in a peaceful, prosperous future for the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand. Are there other members who want to make statements? Senator Rosen of Nevada.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I first want to thank Senator Coons for bringing us all together this week. Like he said, we've been to Brussels, COP26, to Qatar, here to Israel, and moving on to Germany. It's been a robust trip. We've learned an awful lot. I'm very grateful for his leadership in this regard. But now that we're here in Israel, I want to say, as the third Jewish woman in United States history to serve in the United States Senate, and the first former synagogue president to serve in the United States Senate, I feel that I have a unique relationship and a unique position to understand the struggles, the challenges, and opportunities that are here in the Middle East and in Israel. I'm so glad to be here, to have met with the leaders. We met with Prime Minister Bennett. We're about to meet with Defense Minister Gantz and, of course, my good friend Yair Lapid, Foreign Minister. We're going to build on the ongoing work that Congress is doing every day to strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship. And these trips have reaffirmed what I know already, what I've known my whole life. Israel is our closest ally in the Middle East. Enhancing the bipartisan, and it must be bipartisan support for the U.S.-Israel relationship is of paramount importance. Because Israel is a beacon of democracy around the world, it's a strategic ally, it's an important economic partner, it's a progressive nation that supports women's rights, LGBTQ equality, and access to affordable health care for all its citizens. We must continue our efforts to strengthen the alliance with our long-standing economic and security partnership. It's been tremendously important for both nations. That means fulfilling our commitment to replenishing funding for Iron Dome. This is going to allow Israel to replenish its defensive batteries after this spring's brutal assault from Hamas rockets. It means supporting the Abraham Accords and to work to build on the success of the Abraham Accords, expanding the historic agreement to new countries in the Arab world and with whom Israel can form new and productive economic and social partnerships, peaceful ties. And finally, I'd like to thank the Israeli government for their hospitality and reiterate just how much I look forward to continuing to work with them to further invest in the U.S.-Israel relationship, from national security to cybersecurity, to emerging technologies, and to tourism. Toda rabah.
Thank you, Senator. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a brief opening statement? Seeing none, I'll invite any of the members of the delegation who'd like to stand up here and join me as we take some questions for a few minutes. Let me also add, if I can, before we start, just a comment. I'm the chair of the State and Foreign Operations Appropriations Subcommittee, and in the version of the appropriations bill that's been posted, that is the Senate version, we include $3.3 billion in assistance for Israel in accordance with their MOU, and $225 million in support for the Palestinian people in both the West Bank and Gaza. It also includes language that specifically calls out and supports the progress made in the Abraham Accords. So I just wanted to include that in my comments. Who's got a question for us? Please, sir. And if you'd say your name and the press outlet you're from.
Thank you. My name is Laser Berman, diplomatic.
Forgive me.
Sorry.
There are members of the delegation who didn't speak, and so were not introduced. Congressman Tom Malinowski of New Jersey, Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa, and Senator Michael Bennett of Colorado, Senator Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin, and Congressman Scott Peters of California. Forgive me. That's the delegation that's present. There's a few other members who are at other meetings right now. Sorry for the interruption.
Sure. My name is Laser Berman, diplomatic correspondent at the Times of Israel. I want to ask about the Abraham Accords. It seemed like at the beginning of the Biden administration's tenure, there was some ambivalence about how hard they were going to push to expand the Abraham Accords. It seemed like the president was avoiding using the term, and some of his staff was as well. Has that changed? And have you had any conversations as a close ally of President Biden that the administration should do more to help expand the Abraham Accords?
As I said, I'm a strong supporter of the Abraham Accords. In fact, specifically inserted language into the State and Foreign Operations Appropriations Bill to make it clear that this is something that deserves to be supported and expanded. I frankly disagree with your framing. Very early in this administration, and I don't speak for the administration, but I am an observer of their behavior in front of the Foreign Relations Committee. There were senior members of the administration talking about the importance of the Abraham Accords, the importance of moving them forward. I recognize that there's been some discourse about whether or not they used the phrase early and whether or not they were fully supportive. In my experience, every senior member of the administration has been clear that they support implementing and expanding the Abraham Accords. Across the countries that have already recognized Israel and are part of the initial four, I think they're in different stages of progress. In the conversations we had I think there was unanimous support for continuing to partner and to advance both those agreements and then to pursue potential additional agreements. I hope that's helpful. Please, Noga.
I think I can be okay without a microphone.
What's your name and for whom do you write?
Sorry, my name is Noga Tarnopolsky. I write for the LA Times. I wanted to ask if you could share with us the principal message you feel you received from Prime Minister Steyer in Ramallah, and if you see any compromise or any movement in the near future regarding the conflict about the consulate in Jerusalem, the U.S. consulate.
I'll say that the issue of the consulate was raised in each of our meetings, and I think that it is important for the United States to continue to have an open dialogue with the Palestinian Authority, and I think I will leave it to Ambassador Nides to make any public pronouncements about the path forward on the consulate. The general message from the Prime Minister, of course, was welcoming a bipartisan delegation to Ramallah. We went a number of years without senior-level direct engagement between the administration or delegations and the Palestinian Authority. We talked about a number of issues, but I think I should leave it at that, just that the Palestinian Authority and the Prime Minister said it is far preferable for American leaders to engage with us directly rather than, sort of press accounts of us or caricatures of us, and that he wanted to engage around a number of different issues that have been a challenge in our relationship in the past, and was appreciative that the administration, and this is reflected in the appropriations bill, is renewing support for UNRWA and renewing conversations about how to provide support. One of the things that a number of members have been engaged in is the Nidaloe Partnership for Peace program, for example, which is also, I think, a well-known public initiative that will attempt to revive people-to-people programming and investment in entrepreneurship for West Bank Palestinians. Any other questions? Were there other members who wanted to speak to these questions? I apologize if I cut anybody off. If we can, we're going to let everybody who's got a question ask one before we get to Noga.
Hi, Maya Margita at the Media Line. I wanted to get back to the issue of the consulate in Jerusalem. I wanted to know if, where do you stand on this issue, and what are the plans, I guess, moving forward for this?
So I don't speak for the U.S. administration, although a friend and supporter of President Biden's. I think, as this is an executive branch decision, exactly how to move forward with representation of the United States in Israel and in relation to the Palestinian Authority, I think it is best to let the administration and, as I said earlier, their new ambassador, just confirmed by the United States Senate, to make any news about this. It was discussed in all of our meetings. We recognize its importance as an issue. And speaking for myself, I recognize the importance of having an open channel of communication with the Palestinian Authority. But in exactly what space that should occur, I think I will leave that to the administration.
Hi, Lahav Harkov from the Jerusalem Post. You mentioned the Nidaloe Partnership for Peace program. It's about $50 million going to different NGOs. These programs traditionally have been between groups of people that are already sort of happy and willing to engage across lines. And the problem is usually the groups of people that are a bit more difficult to reach, whether in Israel it's the more religious population or settlers that are perhaps less willing to reach out to their Palestinian neighbors. And among the Palestinians also, huge swaths, different groups of people that are reaching out. Is there going to be an emphasis of where this money is sent so that it's not going to the same people talking to the same people over and over again?
Well, two things. There are two purposes for this fund. One is so-called people-to-people programs, which is what you mostly asked about. And the other is to promote opportunities for entrepreneurship, for job creation, particularly among younger Palestinians in partnership with Israelis. That's more than just, as you put it, talking and people talking to each other. It's also about showing some economic hope and some job creation. The board that will review and oversee the grants funded through this program has not yet been fully staffed. I've been engaged in a number of conversations about who should be on that board, as are other members of the group that authorized this legislation and that are appropriating. Ultimately, this is a decision that's going to be made by the administration in the coming weeks. I take your point that broadening people-to-people conversations may be a constructive thing, but until there is a board in place that's going to be making these reviews, I'm not going to make any prediction about what kinds of grants they may make, other than to say I think it is a positive in a world where American society is too divided along political lines. Many societies around the world are too divided. There is, I think, inherent benefit in having people talk to each other. I will also say in the meeting with Prime Minister Bennett last night and with Foreign Minister Lapid today, we all remarked on the breadth of the coalition government in the United States and the Congress in which we serve. There may have been occasionally some moments where the press reported some partisanship or difficulty passing major pieces of legislation. The breadth of the coalition in the current Israeli government is truly impressive. And so I think all of us at some point commented on that. In an environment of division and disinformation, having a people-to-people program that has modest but positive funding from the United States, I think is a good thing. Anybody else have a question, or we can stop early because it's a beautiful day outside.
Nebachena, Associated Press. Can you see me? Right here at the back. I was just wondering if the issue of settlements came up during the conversation at all, especially since the Israeli authorities pressed on with plans on building more settlements despite a pretty harsh rebuke by Ned Price. It was actually just a day after that they announced pressing ahead with these plans. So I was just wondering, did you talk about it? What was your position? And what was the reaction? If you could share that with us. Thank you.
Yes, the issue was raised in several conversations. It came up. It's a significant and unavoidable part of Israeli-Palestinian relations and of the United States in our engagement. I'm not going to repeat any of the specifics of the conversations because, frankly, part of the point of a strong U.S.-Israel relationship is to have these conversations privately rather than in the